And I think we can talk about it now, and if I can talk about it and bang the drum a bit.
And I put that down to your really early years, childhood experience, but also the relationship that you've got. You're amazingly close.
The atmosphere inside Buckingham Palace shifted the moment Catherine walked through those golden doors. Every royal in attendance noticed it. Every whisper stopped mid-sentence. Because on her head sat something that hadn't been seen in public for nearly 2 decades. Diana's most treasured possession. The lover's knot tiara sparkled under the chandeliers. But its true power lay in what it represented. And across that grand ballroom, Queen Camilla's carefully composed expression cracked. Just for a second. But in that second, everyone saw the truth. This wasn't about jewelry. This was about legacy, power, and a message that needed no words. What happened next would shake the very foundation of the modern monarchy. When Diana's ghost walked into the room, the state dinner was supposed to follow protocol. Every detail had been planned months in advance. The seating arrangements, the menu, even precise angle of every photograph. But nobody had prepared for this moment. As Catherine glided across the marble floor, that legendary tiara caught the light in a way that made hearts stop. Those who remembered Diana felt their breath catch. The diamond and pearl masterpiece hadn't just returned. It found a new guardian, and everyone in that room understood exactly what that meant. The lover's knot wasn't merely beautiful. It carried weight that no other royal jewel possessed. Each pearl drop held memories of Diana's triumphs and tears. Every diamond reflected moments when she stood tall despite the palace machinery working against her. This tiara had crowned her during her darkest hours, when her marriage crumbled and the establishment turned cold. But what made this moment truly explosive was the choice itself. Someone had decided Catherine should wear it. Someone had deliberately passed over the queen consort. And that decision spoke louder than any royal decree ever could. The unspoken message that changed everything. To understand the earthquake that followed, we must examine what the lover's knot represents in royal hierarchy. This isn't just any tiara. It's perhaps the most emotionally charged piece in the entire Windsor collection. Created in 1914 for Queen Mary, the tiara gained its true significance when it became Diana's signature piece. She wore it to state banquets while her marriage disintegrated. She donned it for portraits that would later become iconic. The weight of those diamonds, both physical and emotional, became intertwined with her story of survival and grace under impossible pressure. When Diana's life ended in that Paris tunnel, the tiara vanished from public view. For 18 years, it remained locked away, too painful to display, too powerful to destroy. Many assumed it would never be worn again. Others whispered it was being saved for someone special. That someone turned out to be Catherine. But here's where the story takes its most intriguing turn. Royal protocol dictates that when a monarch dies, their jewelry collection gets distributed according to strict rules. The queen consort traditionally is first choice. Camilla, having finally achieved the position she'd waited decades for, should have claimed any piece she desired. The lover's knot should have been hers for the taking, yet she didn't take it. Or perhaps, and this is where palace insiders grow quiet, she wasn't allowed to. Camilla's shock was written across her face. Those who witnessed that evening describe a moment of absolute stillness when Camilla first saw Catherine. The queen consort, known for her unshakable composure, faltered. Her champagne glass trembled slightly. Her smile, usually warm and practiced, became fixed and brittle. She aged 10 years in 10 seconds, one aristocrat later confided. It was as if she'd seen a ghost. In many ways, Catherine hadn't just worn Diana's tiara. She'd channeled something deeper. The way she moved, the angle of her head, even the gentle way she touched the tiara to ensure it was secure. Every gesture echoed the woman who'd once captivated the world. But what truly devastated Camilla wasn't the resemblance. It was a realization of what this meant for her own position. After decades of being the other woman, after years of careful image rehabilitation, after finally becoming queen, she was still standing in Diana's shadow. And now that shadow had a new face. The photographs from that evening tell their own story. In every image where both women appear, the contrast is striking. Camilla wore the girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara, a piece dripping with royal history. Yet beside Catherine and the lover's knot, she seemed to fade into the background. The camera, like the public's heart, had already chosen its focus. The secret meeting that sealed Camilla's fate. What the public didn't know was that 3 weeks before this dinner, a private meeting had taken place at Windsor Castle. Present were King Charles, Princess Catherine, and surprisingly, Princess Anne. The topic, the distribution of the late Queen's personal jewelry collection. According to a former palace aide who spoke on condition of anonymity, the conversation was tense but civil. Charles had apparently suggested that certain pieces should go to Camilla as a gesture of her new status, and never one to mince words disagreed. The Princess Royal made it clear that her mother's wishes should be honored, the source revealed. And those wishes were very specific about certain items. The late Queen Elizabeth, it seems, had made private arrangements long before her death. She had grown exceptionally close to Catherine in her final years, often inviting her for private tea and lengthy conversations about duty, service, and the future of the monarchy. During one of these meetings, held just months before her passing, the Queen had reportedly told Catherine, "Some jewels are meant to be worn, others are meant to be carried forward. You'll understand the difference when the time comes." That time had clearly come, and the message was unmistakable. Kate's calculated power move nobody saw coming. Here's what makes Catherine's choice even more fascinating. She didn't have to wear the lover's knot that night. She had dozens of other tiaras at her disposal. The Cambridge lover's knot, the lotus flower, even the spectacular Strathmore rose. Any of these would have been appropriate for a state dinner. But Catherine understood something that perhaps even Camilla had missed. In the royal family, symbols matter more than words. And by choosing Diana's most beloved tiara for her first major appearance as the new Princess of Wales, she was making a statement that reverberated through every corridor of power. It was brilliant, really, observed a royal historian who requested anonymity. She didn't say a word, didn't make any claims. She simply showed up wearing the one piece that would remind everyone, including Camilla, of a natural line of succession in the public's heart. The timing was particularly pointed. This dinner marked Camilla's first major state occasion as Queen Consort. It should have been her night to shine, to finally step out from the shadows and claim her place in the spotlight. Instead, she found herself competing with a ghost and losing. But perhaps the most telling detail came later that evening. As the dinner concluded and guests began to leave, Camilla was overheard speaking quietly to her lady-in-waiting. "I should have known," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. It was never really about the crown. The palace whispers Camilla tried to silence. In the days following the dinner, Buckingham Palace went into damage control mode. Official photographs were carefully selected to show both women in favorable light. Press releases emphasized unity and continuity. But behind the scenes, a very different story was unfolding. Staff members reported an unusual tension in the private apartments. Camilla, typically steady and good-humored, became withdrawn. She canceled several engagements, citing exhaustion. Those close to her noticed she'd stopped wearing certain pieces of jewelry, particularly those with connections to the late Queen. Meanwhile, Catherine seemed to grow more confident with each passing day. She began appearing at events wearing other pieces from Diana's collection. The Collingwood pearl earrings, the sapphire cluster necklace, even the famous emerald choker. Each appearance generated headlines and comparisons that must have stung Camilla deeply. The Queen Consort tried to address it indirectly, revealed a palace insider. She suggested perhaps a more equitable distribution of the royal collection, but she was told very politely that the decisions had already been made. What Camilla perhaps didn't anticipate was how quickly public opinion would crystallize around these symbolic choices. Social media exploded with side-by-side comparisons. Diana and Catherine wearing the same jewels. The similarities in their grace, their compassion, their ability to connect with ordinary people, and always, the unspoken comparison with Camilla, who seemed to represent everything the public had rejected about the royal family's past. Why Charles stayed silent as his wife suffered. Perhaps the most intriguing figure in this drama was the one who said nothing at all, King Charles III, caught between his wife and his daughter-in-law, between his past and his future. The new monarch found himself in an impossible position. Sources suggest Charles was deeply conflicted about the tiara situation. On one hand, he understood Camilla's hurt and frustration. She had stood by him through decades of scandal, had endured public hatred, had slowly built her reputation through quiet service. Didn't she deserve some recognition? Some symbol of her legitimate place in the family? But Charles also understood something else. Something perhaps Camilla couldn't see. The monarchy's survival depends not on rules or traditions, but on public affection. And that affection had already chosen its recipient. His Majesty was very careful not to interfere, noted a senior courtier. He learned from his mother that sometimes the wisest course is to let symbols find their own meaning. There were reports of private conversations between Charles and Camilla, heated discussions behind closed doors. But ultimately, the king chose preservation over personal preference. He would support his wife in every other way, but on this matter, he remained strategically neutral. This neutrality spoke volumes. It suggested that even Charles recognized what the lovers not represented, not just Diana's memory, but the future of the monarchy itself. And that future increasingly looked like Catherine, the hidden letter that changed royal history. But perhaps the most extraordinary revelation came months later, when news leaked of a letter discovered in the late Queen's private papers, addressed to the future Princess of Wales. It had been written in Elizabeth's distinctive hand and sealed with her personal cipher. The contents, according to those who've seen it, were both touching and revealing. The Queen wrote of her hopes for the monarchy's future, her admiration for Catherine's dedication, and her belief that certain symbols must pass to those who understand their weight. She specifically mentioned the lover's knot tiara, noting its complicated history and her conviction that it should go to someone who could transform its meaning from one of sorrow to one of hope. The letter concluded with a line that palace insiders say left Catherine in tears. Were it not as a burden of the past, but as a bridge to the future, the people will understand, even if others cannot. This document, if authentic, suggests the late Queen orchestrated this moment from beyond the grave. She understood the symbolic power of jewelry in royal messaging. She knew that Camilla, despite her title, would never fully escape Diana's shadow, and she chose to pass that shadow, transformed into light, to Catherine instead. What Diana would have said from heaven, as the dust settled on that momentous evening. Many found themselves wondering what Diana herself would have made of it all. The Princess of Wales, who understood better than anyone the power of imagery and symbolism, would surely have appreciated the poetic justice of the moment. Diana had once said, "I'd like to be a queen in people's hearts." She achieved that goal in life, and clearly, that crown had found a worthy successor. Catherine hadn't sought to replace Diana, an impossible task, but rather to continue her legacy of compassion, dignity, and connection with ordinary people. The lover's knot tiara, which had witnessed Diana's tears and triumphs, now sat upon the head of a woman who understood its true value, not as a pretty ornament or a status symbol, but as a responsibility, a promise to carry forward the best of what Diana represented while forging her own path. For Camilla, that evening marked a turning point. The realization that no title, no protocol, no amount of time could erase certain truths. She might be queen consort, but in the hierarchy of hearts, she would always rank below both the memory of Diana and the reality of Catherine. The tragedy, if one chooses to see it that way, is that Camilla had done nothing wrong that evening. She dressed appropriately, behaved perfectly, fulfilled her role with dignity. But sometimes in the cruel arithmetic of public emotion, being correct isn't enough. Sometimes the heart wants what the heart wants. And the heart, it seemed, wanted Catherine. The Lovers Not tiara continues to appear at state occasions, always on Catherine's head, always generating those same whispers and comparisons. Each time, it tells the same story of love and loss, of past and future, of shadows and light. Camilla continues her duties with admirable dedication, but something fundamental shifted that night at Buckingham Palace. The crown she'd waited decades to wear sits heavy on her head, while the one that truly matters, the crown of public affection, rests elsewhere. In the end, Diana's most treasured possession became her final gift to the monarchy, a reminder that true power doesn't come from titles or ceremony, but from mysterious alchemy between a royal and their people. And in that alchemy, some magic simply cannot be forced, borrowed, or stolen. It must be earned, one gesture at a time, one heart at a time, just as Diana knew, just as Catherine understands, just as Camilla, perhaps too late, has learned.